Well, might as well get started on time because all the stuff at the beginning is useless anyways, and people will filter in to the extent that they want to. Welcome to the session on building IMS LTI tools using the TSUGI framework. I'm Charles Severance from the University of Michigan. I'm a faculty member at the University of Michigan School of Information, and I work for Alongside as well. I also work for IMS. And so I really have to make clear, those of you who know me realize that nobody who pays me money gets to tell me what to do, and very few people pay me money listen to what I have to say. So, so this is not University of Michigan's position. This is not Alongside's position. Not IMS position. It's not the position of the U.S. State Department. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. This is just my opinion and nothing else. So I encourage you to take a copy of my book. This is just a blatant ad for my book. That's at the $15 sign registration things. If you want to do something while I'm talking, you can go to www.tsugi.org and follow the download instructions and see if you can get TSUGI running on your desk. I've been teaching a class on PHP and MySQL, and the second half of the class is about this application. So 85 of my students have already installed this, so you probably can survive the installation. But I keep changing code, so who knows, maybe I broke something since then. But it's pretty simple. My PHP, MySQL, I install MAMP, and then I drop it in a MAMP directory. And it tries to make itself as easy to configure as possible by even, you go to the URL, the text what configuration is missing, and tells you what to do, and keep hitting refresh and get closer and make it to the configuration process. So let me tell you about this project TSUGI. This is an open source project with exactly one committer, and that would be me. And so it is an idea that I've had that I'll sort of explain its logic, but I want to tell you first what it is. And the idea is it is effectively an open source building block. And those of you who saw my talk about the sort of what we were talking about 10 years ago, we started Scalable, not just to create a learning management system, but to create an ecology for building tools and exchanging tools. And so, and we talked about standards back then, but we finally come full circle to the point where that idea, like many of the ideas we came up with 10 years ago, might be at its time. So I am building effectively a building block container, except not using Blackboard's standards. But if you think about a building block, it's a WAR file that you drop into a Tomcat, and then all of a sudden you have new functionality that installs itself and finds its way. I'm doing it all in PHP. I've got plans for Java implementations as well, and it's based on all the IMS specifications. The problem we're facing with IMS specifications is that IMS LTI is extremely successful. And it is literally a page and a half to read the spec and 2 pages of code to see how to implement it. And that's the simplest standard that IMS will ever release. The rest of them will get more and more and more complex. Unlike the previous IMS standards like QTI and Learning Design, these will actually be implementable, but they'll just be a lot harder. So I want to switch from giving away hello world code in IMS to actually producing an open source project that gives you production ready code. So you don't have to learn each one of these things when it comes out. LTI 1 and LTI 2, which is kind of the App Store, or App Store. It has a really cool setting service, common cartridge, caliper, CASA, which is the App Store to App Store communication, roster service, gradebook service. These are going to come pell-mell out of IMS, and they're all going to be good specifications. They're all going to be REST, JSON, sweet, well thought through standards, not like the standards of IMS. Before it got involved in 2001, 2002, and 2003, we've been very helpful to get IMS to be more practical. And I want to make it so that we can exchange tools in the form of zip files and run them locally on a locally hosted environment or a cloud-hosted environment. And we want to install the tools because we don't want to just use cloud-hosted stuff and use trackball or on some of this is there. So if you go back, and I carefully have a copy of the 2003 Sakai proposals, we had this thing called the toolbar to build a profile. We dreamed there would be the book of how to make tools. If you follow the book of how to make tools, then away you go. There were a lot of things that weren't true back then, right? We didn't have cloud stuff, we didn't have Bootstrap, and we didn't have lots of things that make tool development a lot easier. So I think it's an idea that 10 years later is finally trying to come. So here's this slide I've been using for years and years and years in all my IMS presentations, where you've got this poor guy, his name's Joe Berkovitz. He's in New York City. He's like a frustrated musician. He wants to build his music tool and wants to plug in all his learning management systems, and it costs $100,000 each. But like he's just like a guy that's trying to cover his band expenses. He doesn't want to pay $100,000 for each integration, so he has no way to sell the product. But then with IMS LTI, he adds a couple bit of PHP to his little product, and now he walks around and sells all over the planet. He's a very successful company at this point. LTI made that possible. Okay, so that sounds like a really cool success story, but it's not exactly a success story. It causes problems. So here's a typical large Midwestern university these days. They have learning management like Sakai or some other thing, and LTI is like, yeah, I'll have one of those, and one of those, and one of those, and one of those, and one of those. I'm like, that's perfect, right? The world's perfect. This is how the world should be. But unfortunately, all our student data is making these people wealthy in terms of the knowledge that they have about what our students are doing. We can't get the data back. I mean, is Piazza going to give me the data back? Is Blue Button going to give you the data back? I guess if we really push them, they're like, dude, you're only paying $10,000 a year for this thing, and now you want your freaking data back? So we're just like losing all of our data. And the more the things that are outside the LMS are the things that we want to do and that we want to be the innovative parts of our teaching, the more we start to lose our data. What happens when there's 50 of these applications? What happens when one is hosted by a professor under their desk? Do you really want to put your student data on a web server hosted by a professor under their desk? One of your faculty will find it, get a key and a secret, plug it in. I'm sure that's what you want to do. And what happens to our data if we stop paying license to these folks? So I'm not saying LTI is a bad thing. It solves an amazing problem for the marketplace. It works even worse when you say, well, isn't it great that all the people from Europe can store all their student data in the United States, and all the people from China can store all their data in the United States? Isn't that great? How about the people from Russia? They want to store their data in the United States too, don't they? So it's kind of like neocolonialism that we heard about yesterday morning, right? That all this data is going to be somewhere. And yeah, maybe if a really cool companies find a server in Amsterdam, but because they're a United States company, the United States government will look at them anyway, whatever they want to, yada, yada. So, yeah, we've solved a problem, but we really solved the problem for most of the United States, right? And we in the U.S. have a great time. We have all these wonderful cornucopia of gadgets that we can play with, except that it leads to a new problem. And a problem that we in open source should take advantage of, take our ownership of. Like I said, LTI 1 was a magical standard because it was 3 pages long and a couple of pages of Hello World code, and it's been re-implemented many times. Many of the companies in this room probably have implemented it. LTI 2 is a great spec. It's not that bad, but it's not 3 pages long, right? And it's not a hello world. And the problem becomes, okay, fine. So it'll take you guys 1.5 years to make LTI 2. It took me 6 months to make it. And it's going to take everybody like 1.5 years. And then what about Calibre? Oops, there's another 1.5 years. Oops, what about CASA? What about XAPI? Another 1.5 years, another 1.5 years, another 1.5 years. For every little big blue button step, we do this over and over and over and over. So we just like 12 years from now, we'll finally get this stuff working. This is just not going to work. You can't get these things adopted by just saying, go off and write your own implementation of these things. And so the other thing that's happening increasingly is you're finding that campuses are moving to multiple learning management systems, right? We're not going to have a single learning management system anymore. I mean, just the fact that teachers are teaching Coursera and edX plus their campus system. Campuses are going to have a couple of LMSs, right? As folks in the Sakai community start playing with campus, it's entirely likely they'll keep Sakai around for a surprisingly long time. And then if we get to the point where we have lots of tools, then you got all these things connected together, and you have no idea where your data is going, or who holds the data, whatever. And so what I want for TSUGI is I want TSUGI to be a place where you can install a tool, right? So it's not just pointing to a tool anymore. You're going to grab the source code to a tool from maybe an open source tool, maybe even a vendor supplied tool, and you'll have this thing like that I call the TSUGI hosted container. You install the tool in it, you'll provision it with a database, and that'll be on your campus. That'll be owned by your system administrators, following your security rules, and that data will never leave the campus. You could literally have 1,000 tools running on your campus, right? So please don't build another Sakai tool, just build a TSUGI tool, and then put it in there. Oh, and by the way, since it's LTI 1, LTI 2, XAPI, it works with Canvas, works with Sakai, works with all these things, right? And you just plug it in. But you own the hosting environment. So the part in blue is the part that your organization owns. The data never leaves your school. Now, if you want to go cloud hosted with that, go ahead, go cloud hosted with that. The other thing that's really cool about this is now you can start putting like a whole bunch of TSUGI servers on your campus. You can have like production TSUGI, and then you can have like a crazy experimental TSUGI for your instructional designers who just hack PHP on a Tuesday, right? You don't want to put them on the production one, but you can install them on this other thing. So maybe your Coursera people are hacking some funny thing. Maybe one's PHP and one's Java for all you know. So you can have many of these servers, different levels of service in it, different people. You can upgrade these things at different points in time. Your production one might be upgraded slowly with a lot of testing. Your experimental one is kind of production, it's just more dangerous. And so you can have as many of these hosting environments as you want, as many servers as you want for the problem. And so that's what this project is aimed at. It's aimed at enabling the notion of code movement, portability of actual code, not just pluggability of services, but portability of code. And so I am building, effectively, in TSUGI, a learning management system with no user interface. It's all the APIs of a learning management system, all the services of a learning management system, but no learning management system, right? And then you provision it. And I'm starting this in PHP because I'm really agile. And I want to empower the hackers of this world in addition to the production people in this world. I'll talk about Java in a second. And so I even have a server. I have like a little company. It's not really a company. I get this server free from the University of Michigan. And it has like 16 CPUs because they don't know what to do with them. I'm just hanging out on some 16 CPU box at the University of Michigan. And I can give you keys to all the tools that are running in TSUGI right now. I've got a few people who are using those keys. So if you want to go to this site, LTI-tools.dr-chuck.com/TSUGI, you can go log in. You can even request a key if you like. I'm going to give you a key, right? I've got a little thing where I can like prove your key and send it, sends you an email automatically. It's like sort of seems professional by the time it's all said and done. And I'll show you a little bit about how this works in a bit. And so I've got this thing running in production, scalable production, and I just yesterday morning I launched a 60,000 person course on Coursera. And in my Coursera class, most of the class is actually outside of Coursera running on TSUGI integrated with learning comparability. And I'll do a short demo of some of those things. But basically, all the auto grading, peer grading, and everything is all done outside of Coursera on tools that I've written and hosted in TSUGI. So it's really interesting. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I've never been responsible for a production environment. Most of you in this room who work on Sakai have been responsible for production environment and understand the stress of like having your phone buzz and tell you that you're down. Well, I'm now production. TSUGI's in production, and it doesn't mean when it goes down. I mean, I'm a grown-up, and so I'm 24/7 production. So I'm starting to experience all that cool production stuff. So here's this little. I made a peer grader. Coursera has a really cool peer grader in it, but I don't like it because Coursera's peer grader requires kind of like a week for them to write their paper, then you stop them writing, and then you let them grade it for a week, and then they finally get their grade 2 weeks later. I have these simple assignments that can be graded in a few seconds, and so I create what I call a social peer grader, where you upload these images that prove that you did your assignment, and then you click the Grade Other Students button. And if there is at least 2 students hit before, you kind of spend 5 more minutes and you grade the students right then. And if a lot of students are turning the assignment at the same time, if you're lucky, you're actually graded by the time you're done. So you come back to the screen and you've got final grade, and it's fun. And then people go off and actually wander around and grade more people. You don't get extra credit for grading more people, but I wanted to create a workflow that worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that leverage the fact that I have 60,000 students spread around the world and just connect with students at the moment they need to connect it, rather than like Coursera does it, which is not wrong. But again, it's kind of this notion that I've got 60 kids and they're all in a room and we're all in the same time zone, and we're going to have this like week-long thing and no one's going to drop it in that week. Well, in Coursera, they might drop it for you, right? You might lose the student work, so you got to give them feedback right away. So I had to build this thing, right? No one's built this. This is my little peer grading thing, and it's cool stuff. So I built this for Coursera, and then I just also plug it into my CTIL site so that I teach this class. The very class that I use TSUGI to teach is posted in TSUGI. So they have the source code to their autograder, right? And I use these as sample stuff to show automated data models and stuff like that, which is what I'm supposed to teach in class. But the exact same peer grading thing that I innovated to build in Coursera, I just found that my students on campus love it. And then what we do is we actually kind of invert the classroom. You make assignments due at the end of class. So in last time in this class, there's this theory of uploading and auto-grading, right? Everyone's like, boom, 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 you watch it all go, and then everyone's doing it in like 10 minutes. Everyone's uploaded their homework and they're peer-grading each other. I think it's the coolest thing, right? It's very, very modern, very social networking, very Facebooky, very, very cool. But it's my SUGI, right? I got a SUGI tool out there, and I plug it in Coursera, I plug it in, got keys, all that management, all that's taken care of, right? So the philosophy of my PHP SUGI, I started in PHP very much on purpose. I wanted to be able to be agile and fool around and make mistakes and completely refactor my code from time to time. I've taken my inspiration from Moodle. I was fortunate to be able to go last summer to Australia to do a keynote to Moodle in Australia. And after that, I was able to spend a couple of days in Perth with Martin. One of the things we said is like, whatever we do next, let's do it together, right? Let's not have a Sakai on Moodle battle. Let's figure out what we're going to do next. And I haven't shown this to Martin yet, but I intend to. And I intend to hope for his blessing on this, to the point where I can go to a Moodle group and say, hey, you all how to use the PHP SUGI. You guys love this stuff, right? So I'm trying to make it look like the Moodle as much as I can. So if you're familiar with the Moodle module, you go look at the PHP SUGI and you see it, right? It starts out multi-tenant, highly scalable, cookie-free, doesn't use cookies, so it loves iframes. Does all this clever stuff about sessions. Hundreds of thousands of users for this thing, nothing, right? Easy money. Many schools, easy money. Highly scalable. None of the problems that Sakai has that we talked about in Aaron and Sam's session before about like, well, we did this and we optimized this. Like, no, this is like just screams right away. I mean, I just figure like 1 million users is the minimum that this ought to work on. And I'm not interested in trying to get it to 10,000 users. If I can't do it on 1 million users on the first day, that's how many course students I want in my course on Coursera. It's 1 million. So I got to write it so that it works on 1 million. And the notion of like writing for more than one database, that's like the stupidest notion in the world, I think. So this writes to MySQL and uses PDO and says, hey, that's the way we're going to do business around here. And it steals an idea from Moodle. If you've ever looked at the Moodle code, they got this cool auto PDL mechanism that upgrades schemas very, very nicely with these ranges of dates and versions of databases and stuff. I would sit there with Moodle in one Moodle. I don't know how they do that. Oh, sweet, I'll do the same thing. So people, again, in Moodle who are used to like creating schemas, upgrading schemas, it's very close to that, right? Moodle's, the places where I diverge from Moodle is where Moodle's gotten too complex because they've got themselves almost 14 years of legacy dragging along. I got no legacy. So this is like what Moodle would be if Martin's going to rewrite it. I hope that's how he sees it. Like, oh yeah, you don't have legacy. This is pretty awesome. You're just starting with Twitter Bootstrap and jQuery from the very beginning, and that's just how you build stuff, and you don't have to drag all this crap along. Just like they could drag all this crap along in Sakai. It's Twitter Bootstrap and jQuery. That's how you do it. Okay, let's not mess around. Let's not worry about like Java server faces and custom-built CSS. So it's just fun from time to time to start fresh, especially at this moment in time where it's kind of clear how we build a lot of these things, with sort of REST-based backends, jQuery, all those kinds of things. So if you're looking at the PHP SUGI code, you see like require once config.php is the first line in every file. Well, that's also the first line in every Moodle file because there's a file called config.php in the top directory and everything's mod /something in Moodle. Like literally, it's the same line. Now after that, you have a variable called $CFG, which happens to have configuration. That's exactly what it is in Moodle. There is all these uppercase variables like $user, $output, and objects, and I just ripped all that off, right? I want Moodle developers to walk into here and say, this is like what a module should be. This is a taut little module. This is not a nasty module with all the weird stuff. The thing I don't like about Moodle is out, but all the things I like about it. What? No, $PDO. I do $PDO because that part of Moodle sucks. That part of it sucks. I know. I mean, that's the part I can't figure out. But I can figure out $output and $user and $course. That makes sense. But $DB, because Martin is trying to import it. And Martin has a legacy of 14 years where that evolved over time. And, yeah. So that's the weakness. So that's one of Martin's weaknesses that makes modules really difficult. And the UI that's not Twitter Bootstrap, sometimes it is Twitter Bootstrap, other times that's legacy. See you later. But even things like Martin's got these HTML table writers. I got HTML table headers, right? And so it just turns out that some of the good ideas were just driven in the same direction. You don't want to write tables by hand, you just build table writing code. And so we can do some demos. Probably the simplest, most fun demo to do here would be to go to qa10.longsite.com. qa10.longsite.com. It's just one of Longsight's QA servers that's got a release candidate 10.1 RC. And log in and make an account and go to membership and then join TSUGI test. And I have placed a TSUGI course map tool. So every course can have a course map. It's only viewable by the people in the course. They get to click on this and change what they're sharing on the map. Share your first name, share your email on the map. You know, and I just made this thing up. So now you just like, oh, there's a TSUGI course map. You all want to get a key now, so you can put TSUGI course maps in all of your courses that you're teaching. Right? So QA-longsite10.com. I don't know if we've got anybody yet. Let's see, it's probably not fast enough to make it there already. We don't have anybody yet. Okay, so there's the first thing. No one's there yet. Tell my students that if they're a little worried about their location, just put themselves in the middle of an ocean if they're really scared, or just put themselves like in the right country. So if they're afraid, put them like right on their house for some reason. A lot of people don't want to put their house online. So I don't think so somebody worked on it. So we at least have one more person, or we got to trace back, whichever. Can't believe the trace back. It's awesome code. Okay, so that's the first demonstration. And so the second demonstration would be to go to http://https LTI-tools.drchuck.com, and you can log in through the Google account, and then you can ask for a key. Right, saying, so this is the key request for me.drchuck.com. Let's go into the administrator user interface. Oh, here's my database upgrade thing. It looks just like Google's database upgrade. Oh, it doesn't load up. Yeah, all my schemas are up to date, so that's what it looks like. All my schemas are up to date. And Texas keys. So there are the 3 keys that I have, and so nobody else has done a key request. But that's okay. You don't have to do a key request. And so that's so we're seeing a Sakai tool. And then let me just show you basically how it works inside Coursera. This is my Coursera live Coursera class right now, and I have these little assignments. If you click on this little guy, there's a little video that tells you.
Our first assignment, running the classic Hello World program. This Hello World program is under the house.
Which club?
In ourselves, that's ourselves and users. So
I'm interested in philosophical question. So I'm showing how to use our autograder. This program is a one-line program, so it's really easy, so you can kind of get used to doing how the autograder is. I really want you to do the optional assignment.
And then they click on this thing to do the autograder. And the autograder is just a tool I wrote in TSUGI. You can see it's being hosted on one of my servers. Living. Oh, too bad when you have that audio on your computer. So this is just a code that I wrote. It's a browser-based Python compiler and browser-based Python runner. So it compiles and runs the code. And I got a syntax error, so I'll fix the code. I'm fixing that, and check the code, and then it's happy, and then it actually sends an LTI grade back to the server. So that's all LTI. This is just a TSUGI tool, right? So this is just one. and I would say, oh, you want to do Python AutoGrader, you've got a TSUGI running on your campus. You grab my zip file, you drop it in, and poof, it shows up in the list, right? So I can see the grades. So these are my Coursera students. Busy students, busy Coursera students. So that's it running in Coursera, and then I can go into CTools and take a look at my PHP class that I just finished teaching about a month ago. And I go to Lesson Builder in CTools, and I click on my second Android assignment, which I used a peer grader. Oh, I was going to show you peer grader. I'll go back. So this is a peer grader, and this is all the grades that I get. Grades in my class. Well, that's actually a batch job. I've got code that we would find useful if you're going to do LTI, where it will go and check the server to see if the grades are wrong and resend all the grades if you want to resend all the grades. Turns out once you get to scale, that's a mighty useful thing. Do you really all want to write that yourself? Or you just want to drop a little zip file for me and it says, I know how to do LTI. I will do this for you. You build a TSUGI tool and it's going to do grades, then you can have this grade maintenance thing for free. That's pretty cool. Right? So there are things that after a while, when you're really running a tool at scale, you just need this stuff, like a grade book. So, so there it is. And I have all kinds of tools. I make AutoGraders for PHP. I make all kinds of things, and I just knock these things out, throw them in my TSUGI. Right? You don't have to put them in yours, but if you have a class that you want to AutoGrade, I've got like 3 classes on campus using various versions of my software to do their AutoGrading. Turns out it's really awesome to make AutoGraders, because all of a sudden your teaching assistants on campus have like 20 hours to mentor students instead of 2 hours to mentor students and 18 hours of grading. Works out really well. So let me go back to Coursera and show you the peer grading. I do peer grading for things like proving that you've installed Python. So I tell them to run a Python program and take a screenshot of both your text editor and a screenshot of the program running. And I just put up something, so they, apparently my students are still giving me a 6. Oh, this student gave me lower than a 6. I don't quite know why they gave me lower than a 6, but because the assignment is supposed to be a text editor, and then the other assignment is supposed to be a sure Python running, but there's cats instead. So perhaps they marked me down because I didn't do the assignment very well. And it's all like grade maintenance. I already showed you that. But this is a batch job for real complex assignments that recomputes all of your grades. In case like my logic didn't work, batch jobs and stuff, that's cool stuff. It's all there in TSUGI. Let's see, what else do I want to show you? Oh, do you have any questions? I just go. Okay, so there we go. OEDF, thank you. So somebody did a key. So that's our purpose, right? Go. I get my key in. Oh, I think actually I just have to type. So I can go to view keys and then add a key and type it in. Okay, so that's cool. So the other thing that I've built for the PHP version is a developer mode, and you can play with the developer mode as well. The password, you can probably guess what the password is. The default. It's very secretive. So the password is secret. And this unlocks a screen that's designed to rapidly test LTI tools. I guess you probably could test a tool other than mine by changing these URLs, keys, and secrets. But basically, I've got it set up so that it understands sort of all the TSUGI rules. And it looks through all, just like Moodle does, it looks through the mod folder, and I've looked through solutions and samples, and you can tell what folders you want to put your tools in. But it makes it so that you can quickly test a tool. So this is a rock, paper, scissors game. So if you go in, you can play rock, paper, scissors, right? I'll throw a rock. Now, I didn't give you much time to do that. Come back and play rock, paper, scissors again. Oh no. And then I also made it so that, again, I did this so my students could write LTI tools really fast. And I wanted to make it so that they didn't have to know all this crap that we know in post data. So I have it so that they can switch from instructor to student. So a student can now do paper. and then switch to ed student, right? And then ed student can do rock. And I even made it so that you can switch back to the instructor. So I'm playing against yourself. And I can even be anonymous. I don't know if this code works with anonymous. Apparently it works with anonymous. So I can do an instructor and 2 students with just that much clicking to do QA on my code. That was my rock, paper, scissors game. Here's a map application we're playing with. Right, so I can with my pen as Jane instructor, and I can hover over and see the name of the student, then I can plug into that exact same application just that quickly. This is a developer mode, right? And I can be Sue student. I can see that Jane instructor has not released her information, but then I can do that student, and then I can say, let's check to see if Jane instructor actually saw that move. Yes, she did. So away we go. Right? So this is my test harness for building TSUGI tools. Again, tested on my students. Here's my Python autograder. Here is my, this is a grade book. That's, so you've got all these grades stored outside in LTI, and you want to be able to scrounge through them. You want to auto-submit these things. It's probably easier for me to show you this working inside Coursera in this link called External Grades. And so this is all my external grades, but because I'm a teacher, I can go look at the internal grades of everybody else, and then I can go to one of my teaching assistants, Sue, and then I can do things like, oh, and I got to do the other thing to resend them. But this does things like it actually retrieves the grades and checks to see if the server grade is the same as the client grade. Again, this is stuff that you ought to start doing in LTI, right? We're all being real lazy about LTI and hoping the grades make it back. Well, this is a way to guarantee it. Okay? This kind of thing that it's harder than you think to test this on every learning management system and get this right. It's harder than you think to test it. Like, what's the length of a source did? Well, it turns out Google has really long ones, but I've already tested it. Baked it with code. So everything's real easy to build these things. Going back to LTI tools, let's see if there's anything else interesting here. I made an attendance widget. I don't know why I made it orange. Made a peer grading system. I've showed you a bunch of times. I have a chat. This is just one of my assignments that I make the students do. I have a wisdom of grounds game. That's it. Okay? So those are things you can play with. Go back to any questions? Okay. Okay, so those are things you can play with. Those will continue to work after we're done. This stuff's in production, including alongside QA service in production. And so this is where I'm going next, right? I don't want a lot of people adopting this code yet, because I want people to look at it and say, you don't know anything about PHP. I want like Aaron and Sam to look at it, or maybe John and say, like, you are a lousy developer. If you were a smart developer, you would do this. I'm like, okay, I'll change everything, because it's small right now. I can fix the mistakes that I've made. I think I've got quite far. I'm a very creative guy, but I'm not as smart as like the other people in this room are. They're all smarter than me. And so I don't want them to like say, oh, it's written by Chuck, so it must be good. Well, most of you know long enough, you know me long enough, that if it's written by Chuck, it's really clever and yet bad, right? And can be improved. I need critique. I would love to have people look at this and tell me what's wrong with it, right? Unlike how we did Sakai, where you got to look at it later, but then it was too late. You can look at it now and tell me what's wrong. I can't figure out PHP internationalization. I figured out Java internationalization, PHP with get text and all that. But I bet somebody in this room knows PHP internationalization like that and says, oh, this is the right way to do it. I want this internationalized from the beginning, right? I don't want this to be yet another neo-colonialist must be an English thing. I want to be able people to write this right. And it should be easy, right? There should be tools that just like click, bang, use the editor and all that stuff that we know how to use, but I don't know how to do it. I need to go to the Moodle community. I want something a little more proud of it. I'm going to go to Moodle. I'm going to say, hey, you folks, what do you think? I tried to make you happy. And they're like, that sucks. Or maybe they might say it's kind of cool. So we'll see. I'm adding LTI 2.0 support probably in the next couple of weeks. so that there's at least something that can install 50 tools into Sakai that does the only LTI tool on the planet. Add XAPI support to it, add Caliper support, and Casa support. Casa is the app store. These are the, well, XAPI is not an IMS spec, but the rest of them are IMS specs that are getting ready to pop. And so I need to write this stuff. And toward the end of an IMS spec, you need to write code. But now here I've got like N tools, and if other people started playing with it, that'd be that many more tools that could play with Casa and Caliper and XAPI. And like it could do the coolest of freaking demos if there were like 80 tools in here. So I do like the fact that I'm in production and I can actually post tools. If they put it in my GitHub, it'll just show up on my production servers. People can really use this stuff, right? And away you go. Okay, so that's the PHP version. You can kind of see this PHP version as this organic, crazy, experimental, refactor, screw it up, fix it kind of thing. But I think the real fun of this is going to come when I write a Java version or someone else writes a Java version. I'm not in a hurry for the Java version. But I want to tell you what the architecture for the Java version needs to look like. Okay? Because this is cool. So today we have a Java application running in Tomcat that has kind of some API layer from Sakai, and we have the Sakai tool. That's the funkiest freaking thing in the world, right? You can't agree on one thing. Blackboard has a similar thing. It's technically superior, but it's not open, so too bad for them. You write a build it, and that's a WAR file. You can distribute it and hand them on to people, right? Okay, but how about this? We basically put a TSUGI layer inside Sakai, and you can drop a WAR in Sakai. You drop a TSUGI WAR inside Sakai. We make a TSUGI layer inside Blackboard. We drop a WAR inside a Blackboard Learn, and the exact same tool, the exact same source code that talks only to IMS APIs that are already pre-provisioned by both Sakai and Blackboard. Now we have one WAR. Okay, so you think of your Sakai as like it's a bunch of WAR files. Some of them are weird Sakai tools, and they can be just as easily TSUGI tools. So you don't even need another server, and you don't need another server on Blackboard. You just throw those buggers in, right? This is an idea that John Fontaine and I, neither of us, of course, work for Blackboard anymore. John Fontaine and I said, why don't we come up with a WAR file format that drops into everything? Just like we have a WAR file format that drops into both Sakai and uPortal because of JSR 168. Let TSUGI do this so that you're launching LTI tools, and because they're actually LTI2 tools, they can install themselves into these systems automatically as if they're built in. And son of a gun if they're not built in, right? They're sitting on the exact same server. Or you could just throw up a Tomcat, stick MySQL on the back end, configure a TSUGI, and you just start dropping WARs. There's no Sakai running in that Tomcat, right? There's just a Tomcat. It's just a naked Tomcat. Or you stick it in an Elastic Beanstalk. You stick a jar up in Amazon and say, yo, Amazon, give me a database on the back end. This thing auto-populates the database. You hit a little button, it makes all the tables, or upgrades the tables, does whatever, and bam, you got an Elastic Beanstalk, maybe for just one tool, and away you go. And it's all the same WAR file, right? Whether it's on a Tomcat on your campus, Elastic Beanstalk in Amazon, sitting right in your Sakai next door to all the rest of the Sakai tools, or sitting right in your Blackboard next to all the rest of your Blackboard tools. I think this is pretty freaking cool. I don't want to start this until I understand the freaking architecture, right? Because if we get it wrong, people might start using this. PHP is crazy. But I want to get the architecture right. And I want to have these things have the exact same data model for the core things like grades and LTI launches and users and membership and how to do a multi-tenancy, etc. I want that shit working. So that when we do the Java thing, it's just working, right? We don't have the chaotic part in the Java stuff. But somebody might just beat me to the punch and build one of these things, because they're not that hard to build. If we assume that I know what I'm doing, which is a bad assumption, it would be easy to just turn. I could turn this thing into, I could clone it in Java in about 2 weeks. But I would be cloning the wrong things. I don't like what I have in PHP. I'm getting close every time. I refactor a lot. It's just not that much code. That's what's beautiful about it. So I think big about this stuff. I think that this is the next 10 years of our field, period. End of story. Right? I'm hoping that this TSUGI PHP and perhaps even by then TSUGI Java come as incubation projects to Apereo by this time next year. I want to build a tool ecology that benefits all teachers and all learners, regardless of the LMS on their campus. My campus is likely to have 2 to 5 LMSs for the next decade. But I want to be able to build tools, and I want instructional designers and local developers to build tools. and bring those tools to Apereo as open source tools, much like uPortal has the portlets process, we have that TSUGI process that makes tool after tool after tool after tool in open source and makes it available. I want us to own our cloud choices. Cloud's not automatically bad. Schools like Elastic Beanstalk. The difference there is schools are making a choice. If they want to run an Elastic Beanstalk, or if they want to hire a commercial affiliate to run their TSUGI tool, great. But if the next day they want their data back and they want it on their campus for some reason, they can do that. That's what the value proposition of Sakai and frankly Moodle is, right? Your cloud choices are your choices to make as compared to the vendor's choices. And that's why what we do in this room is important. And I want it to be the same for tools as it is for learning management systems. I want to see Blackboard, Moodle, Canvas, and D2L schools joining Apereo and coming here because they're building tools for their systems. Except that we get all their tools also. This is even better than uPortal portlets, right? This is a tool that runs in every one of those systems. You know, LTI-1, LTI-2, all these things are going to start working in all those systems. And now we got an Apereo with people out the back door, right? Because every learning management system needs to be here and needs to be a member of Apereo and needs to be part of this. That's the kind of teaching and learning transformation that we signed ourselves up to do 10 years ago. We're not done yet, we're just getting started. That's the end of my talk. Hallelujah. Come to the front. Any questions? I have this effect on my students as well. Yeah, Mark?
Have you looked at the internationalization?
I have looked at the internationalization in Moodle and PHP. I don't like it. I believe that Martin made a choice too early. I believe that getText and some of the mechanisms that he used were ideal for him at the point in time with the getText, the standard stuff. And I think if you look at the standard stuff, I'm actually more inspired by the WordPress approach to internationalization. So I think that, so what I've got so far in internationalization, which is a tiny bit, is really a ripoff of the classic underscore style and the E underscore style. So WordPress has done a little bit of variation on the standard the new getText stuff. And I think it's elegant, I think it's fine, and I think Martin just sort of the getText wasn't mature enough 14 years ago for him to use it, and so he naturally built his own 14 years ago, but I think it's a mistake at this point to sort of avoid the getText college. Yes, he can, right? He's stuck with that, right? You know, if I got Martin a couple of mojitos, he might say that's Moodle 3, right? He said that's what I would do if I could do it again, and I'm doing what I can do if I can do it again. The difference is, unlike Martin, I don't have to worry about the revenue. I just like to do cool stuff. Because people seem to pay me to do cool stuff.
You didn't worry about it earlier, did you?
Yeah, nowadays. This guy's employees. Yeah.
Your architecture doesn't seem to be like it's completely about changing the location of data. Unless you actually run TSUGI and post all your tools. And there's going to be a battle between the university and vendors about that, even if they believe in TSUGI, you don't want to run it themselves, so you have to pay them for it. Michigan's maintaining a hard stand. I'm not sure how many of the rest of us depend on our administrators to actually do it.
So you're absolutely right to basically say that is Big Blue Button going to give you a zip file that you can run in Tomcat on your own campus? And the answer is probably not.
They probably will.
Okay, so Piazza. Let's go Piazza. Will Piazza give you a gem to install Piazza on the Ruby version of TSUGI, Ruby TSUGI, on your campus, right? And the answer is no, right? But then the answer is, great. So we'll just build ourselves a discussion wiki combination with a little scrolling bar at the top, and we'll have open source, and then Piazza can lose business, right? Or maybe Piazza will change its mind. So that's the first answer. I mean, we will be able to write our own tools so much faster than these little startups can write these tools. I write these tools in a frickin' weekend. I mean, the stuff I write is usually a weekend's worth of work. That's how taut it is. It's how tiny. It's the essence of what you need. And with jQuery and Twitter Bootstrap, like shit's easy, right? It's easy. You know, there's no argument about how to make stuff because you can make it fast. Throw a little JSON coming out of a little PHP script and throw a little pretty little dialog box that comes up in a modal window. I mean, like, it's just such easy money at this point, right? So we could rewrite Piazza so much faster than Piazza can write it if we put our minds to it, and if 4 or 5 people decided to do it in this room. So that's the first answer. The second answer is, if we can convince Piazza to do the real TSUGI, and it has XAPI and Caliper and things in it, then at least you could get a copy of your data, right? So right now, if they don't use TSUGI, they would say, oh, I read the Caliper spec, and that's a lot of work, right? Now, we can't get them to go back and rewrite it with TSUGI, right? But a future vendor, future Piazza, right? A future Piazza could say, you know, I'm going to use TSUGI. And because I've used TSUGI, I got Caliper for free, right? So we're going to send your data back to Rutgers or Michigan or whatever. So maybe it is a closed source thing, and maybe TSUGI's running on their servers. But because Caliper is easy for them as compared to what it is today, which is impossible, because standard might be done that. But at least maybe you can get your data back in a standard way, and TSUGI can help them more easily give you what you want, and you're not fighting, just like you're not fighting with them to say, oh, hey, Noteflight, why don't you have a D2L integration? They said, because it's $100 grand, right? So I don't do it. Well, no, now they have a D2L integration. So you go to Noteflight and say, why don't you have a Caliper integration? They're like, it's $100 grand. Well, no, it's not. So if they can use this stuff that we build, then it's free for them. And again, you gotta sort of skate to where the puck is going rather than skate to where the puck has been, and you hope that new tools get there. And then as you start adding app stores to this thing. Any other questions? What's my time? Just talk. Oh, I'm 5 minutes over time. 5 minutes over time. Okay, well, I will thank you for your time, and I'll be in Vegas at the Sands from Tuesday, Wednesday. But
I'm understanding this correctly. But this approach of throwing stuff in, that's already done, right? All these little tools from that existing infrastructure, right? You know, that's going to affect memory footprint, the CPU, you know, like you're putting your you're throwing an extra whole bunch of resource at this thing.
yep.
Thought through, like, how to manage that.
Well, you know, sometimes you'll want them all together, and maybe you'll have something that sticks by itself, right? So that you're isolating that thing. You can put up as many of these SUGI things as you want, and you know, with LTI2, you can like install those. So you'll install a thing in one or more of your SUGIs, and then you'll add an LTI2 to say install the things that are on that server, and pop, they come up, and they have different URLs that we don't care. So you can isolate it to the extent that you want, right? But I think on average you'll find, like, there's no reason to put, like, you've got a bunch of building blocks in Blackboard, and you're going to put, like, 4 of the building blocks here and 1 of them over there. It's like, on average they're clicking on something. And as long as these building blocks aren't insanely bad, they're kind of all roughly equal. As long as they're not n-squared building blocks, they're probably okay. So on average, you're going to want to do that. I'm more interested in multiple SUGI servers to say, if this is one we allow being upgraded 50 times a day, and this is one we upgrade, you know, every 2 months. That's what's most.
Yeah, that's where I was putting.
Yeah, that's the most important part.
Yeah, it's the maintenance schedule.
Yeah.
That's what LTI is great.
Right. I'm following what you've been saying all along, right? You've been saying that all along. I'm just stealing that idea. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll be around. Thanks a lot. What is it? Right. Talk showed you. Depending on how you pronounce it. Next reason. You guys say it's got a short first syllable. You say it should be like Americans say it. You say it means a connection. So it depends on how you say it. Yeah, I mean, I was just better than you. It's actually also a relatively common last name. No, you talked about this last time. Because I had this, I mean, so at some level, it's been in production, I keep broken away from writing in. And so, yeah, stuff in production, library strategies. As compared to here's this library. You go off of this competition for a session, project was great.
Today, I just arrived to your book.
We were worried that you wouldn't make it.
Today,
You all have to walk in, just you.
yeah, just me. Terrible. Hi, how are you?
Good to see you. Your conference was quite good.
Yeah, karaoke was legendary. It's great to see you.
How's your Spanish?
Hey, great to see you. And I just arrived to your book. Really. Because you have to be taking 3 hours. All of the schools would actually be here so that they do great information. But Shayla and Amanda are planning on. I just.
Yeah, these are all.
Just right. Today's issue. Now we can Student groups such as reading clubs. Yeah. You are. You said it here. Gosh. Maybe the whole page. Have you guys also done the MC? Oh, yeah, sure.
So we need about 2 more minutes and we'll get started. Yes. Get ready to get started, folks. Jack. Oh. Okay, so thanks for coming out to this session. I'll make one just logistical note before I get started, because if you've looked at some of the schedule information before yesterday or the day before, you probably saw that John Norman, who's back there, I think, and they felt to present this session about OAE and some of the pilots that we've done for institutions. But since Marist received the Teacher's Guide Innovation Award this year, we're going to repurpose this session to focus on some of the work that happened at Marist. And I think in particular, since this is really a student-driven project, and we have students who ran the project here with us, we decided that rather than listening to 3 old farts talk about what students have done at Marist, it might actually be more interesting to hear from the students. That's going to be the main part of the session. I do want to set the stage here a little bit. I'll cover a few things that I give in a little bit more detail than OAE state of the project address, but I'll try to do that correctly. I think most people probably saw that.
talk a little bit about this academic community cloud model of Maris, and then introduce the fashion online learning domain. I'll turn it over to our students to demo some of that and talk about their experience. If there's anything in the last session, you might want to get tissues out, because at least it was very exciting, very emotional last session. And then we'll wrap up with questions and stuff. So, Maris College, which is a mid-sized liberal arts institution in Poughkeepsie, New York, 2 hours north of New York City, has been pretty heavily invested in distance education for many years now. We launched our first MBA online in 1998, so it was pretty early in the distance education field. Today we have 6 fully online degree programs, master's degree programs. We're actually just launching a fully online undergraduate degree teaching program, and about 150 to 200 fully online undergraduate courses that we run primarily over our winter and summer semesters. So distance education is not something new at Maris. We've spent a lot of time over this period really investing in making sure we have really high quality online learning experience in our online courses. That we have a range of standards and measures to track that and to make sure that those are really at least equivalent, not even better than face-to-face. But throughout the time during the last few years, I think many of us at Maris have realized that there's something missing from the online experience that our students get with the online courses versus the experience that students get in face-to-face courses. Our college president sometimes calls this the secret sauce of Maris, or something that you get as being part of the Maris community. You're on our campus that has been hard to translate to our online degree programs and courses. Probably if you were in that session yesterday, saw this slide. It was really kind of dawned on us as we looked at this issue, getting really serious about it maybe 2 years ago, that on our physical campus we had these different spaces that are designed to support these different forms of academic collaboration. So we have these instructional classrooms, obviously, these are built to support formal kinds of academic collaboration, teacher learning activities specifically. There'd be very structured environments, kind of single-purpose rooms in most cases. Rigid design, we were talking over dinner last night, that even the rooms that are designed to be moved around, have movable tables and stuff, often everybody leaves them. They've been pretty close to the front. So again, you don't get someone walking off the street, just sitting down in a class and stuff participating. We also have the academic common spaces, which are designed to support a lot of informal academic collaboration. Faculty committees, research activities, student clubs, student projects, groups, and so forth. These are pretty unstructured environments, very kind of multi-purpose, flexible, and I think most importantly, open to the world to invite in. So we regularly will have, for example, business leaders from the area around our scholars will come in, they'll meet with students, work with them on projects in these collaborative spaces. So as we began to realize that on our campuses we have different spaces that are designed differently, they function differently, serving these different purposes, we also realized that much of what we've been doing over the last 10 years is focusing completely on the left side of this chart. We've been focused on learning management systems, deploying those, innovating with those, to create really powerful online spaces for learning. We hadn't been so focused on the other side. And we realized that that was really a kind of missing piece. And so at the same time, you have to begin piloting the open academic environment. This is a kind of earlier version of it. And again, it feels to us like, hey, that environment could really fill that right side. And I think most people have a general sense of what we need to make sure I'll play a very short video clip here. And now it's payback time.
The open academic environment is designed to support many types of collaboration, like research collaboration, ad hoc student groups such as reading clubs, group projects, study groups, and collaborative courses, committees, or even your rowing club. Collaboration can happen as small lightweight groups to large active groups, even across different institutions. It's a network of content, people, and groups, where you can share files and links, create documents, and work on them with multiple people at the same time. And you can provide feedback or participate in discussions. It provides powerful and flexible permissions, and it makes it easy to open things up to the wider world. All of this can be searched and discovered, while easily reused in other collaborations. The OAE is the only academic system of its kind that's designed user-led. It's based on lots of input and tests from real students and real academics. This environment attempts to provide seamless integration with systems you already use, so there's no need to enter the same data over and over again, and you can just focus on getting the work done.
So, yeah, just make sure that since they're OAE, and slides here wrap up. So, what ultimately came from this, exploring this concept, or the challenge of having both, supporting both formal and informal collaboration, is what we're calling the academic community clouds, the buzzword that we campus labeled this concept. And the idea was to deploy both the Sakai management system to support all the things that happen in structured teaching and learning activities, stuff on the right. So this would everything from credit-bearing online courses to non-credit bearing training programs to booths, which is something that is part of the work on with fashion students. At the same time, we deploy OAE to support all the informal academic collaboration that often takes place in and around those formal academic collaboration. So it might be used for study groups and activities during formal learning. It may take place or be used to support collaboration following formal learning, and so forth. So we've applied and we're kind of doing some great experiments last year and going into next year to really try to implement these academic community clouds in a number of different disciplines. We've been experimenting with our computer science department and launching things around enterprise computing, which is an area of expertise. Next year we'll probably launch something along these lines for leadership business that we started. But one of the ones that we focused on last academic year was working with the fashion department to create what they ended up, our students really branded the Fashion Online Learning Domains. This is the name for this academic community cloud. There's three major components to it, and I'll mention these briefly and then turn it over to the students to show you some examples, particularly of OAE and how that is being used. So we did create an informational kind of landing page. We felt like we needed to kind of explain to people what was going on, give them a doorway into the cloud, academic community cloud. Sakai was deployed to support a number of groups, and in particular what I was excited about was the peer-to-peer group that was developed by students for students on street trend analysis. I don't know that there's been another group developed by students for other students, so that in itself was a pretty unique tool. And then OAE was there to support things like having everybody who was collecting street trends from around the world be able to see those trends and share pictures and collaborate with each other. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Steve to show some examples. And I'm not sure if you have this in data too. I have a slide so we can show people how to actually go in and add stuff, street trends you might be noticing to OAE. Steve. Oh, I'm sorry. I should introduce you.
Hi, I'm Shayla Brown. So in the fall semester, we had students who were abroad in Paris, London, Florence, Hong Kong, and in Manhattan join what we called street trend labs. So what we had them do is we had them take 2 photos during the week. So each week they would be walking around, looking at the sites, going to class, and if they saw something that stood out to them on the street, we asked them to approach that person and take a photo, or if they even took a photo from afar, anything so that they can gather evidence of what would accumulate into what they call the street trend. So they post it twice a week in their city group's library. So I'll show you that right now. So if you go onto the poll, we go into the street. Okay, so these are the different city groups that we have. So, for example, if you go into Hong Kong, So the students that were in Hong Kong studying abroad there would join this group, and then they would post their findings into the library. So we asked them to post twice a week, and then they would go in and they would comment on other students' findings, and then they would go into the other city groups and comment on their findings as well, basically creating this international discussion. So what the students would do, they would upload this photo, and there would be one little summary post, and they would say, this is what I noticed about it, and then people would go in and they would comment on it as well. And something else that we did was we wanted to create tags. So what we did is in the detailed section up here in the image, well, you can't do it now, but when you're uploading an image, you go to the details, and they would say 3 main things about the photo. So for this one, for example, they probably said, Hong Kong, blue, florals. So then they would save it, so anytime when you went up to search in the search bar, those things would come up. So we really wanted to do that as a way of tracking trends. So an example of that is,
I signed you out before, so you're not signed in this year.
okay, I think that should be fine.
Yeah.
Leather, so if you type in something like leather, all these photos come up from all over the world. So this is a good way of seeing what's going to come up next in terms of fashion, and also to see the different trends in each area.
So as Shaylin, I'm Amanda, and as Shaylin mentioned, we created a Main Street Trend Lab. So after working with the OAE program, we ideally realized that we would like to have an archive and subgroups, but for now we worked around that, and we created a Main Street Trend Lab. Sorry. So as you saw, we had the different street trend labs, and this is our Main Street Trend Lab, which is the page that we have created for everybody to post to. So these are just some examples, and students would post them. These are actually some from real students that actually went, that we got from the MOOCs. And then we would take these photos, and to make it more interactive, I researched and found a website that created a map. So not only were students able to see what was happening on the OAE and have conversations there, but they were able to see where these trends were exactly located. So for an example, in Paris, this was one of the trends that was found. And then students were able to go back into the OAE and have conversations there, but also see exactly where that trend was located in each city.
So what's interesting about this is not only can you spot trend by the city, but you can also be spotting trend now by the area of the city as well.
And we incorporated this peer-to-peer and collaboration aspect by putting this link for this map on the OAE for people to upload there, but also inside the group. So that's where you're able to integrate it in different aspects.
So as you can see, it's similar to the OAE in that it has the location, the main trend that they're focusing on, and the little summary underneath. Sorry, we're struggling with the now.
You are.
So going back to OAE, We had all these different cities at first, as one version of the OE that we started working on, and then when we moved to all of the content, we created this lab. And we took only our best photos, and we found it really easy to share content that way as well, and we used it for documents and collaborating with our class. Yeah. Sorry. So this is where we were able to collaborate with our class, not just with other students internationally, but we uploaded photos and content.
I didn't realize you guys were following me so much.
So you have discussions. So this was super helpful when we had a classroom discussion and we never really came to an agreement at the end of the class. Our assignment for ourselves was to go in and to collaborate on the OAE. So, for example, this was a discussion when we were trying to figure out what handout to use, which if you went to last session, you got one of them. But
It is a library.
So when we were creating the fold, we also had to share a lot of content, including articles, photos, and we wanted to bounce off each other's ideas and creativity. So we uploaded all of our content here to talk about and comment on. And all of this was moved throughout the MOOCs, and it was moved throughout other places on the fold. And we would have discussions that we didn't have enough time to pick up through class, as Shirley mentioned, on the OAE. And we found that the document aspect of this, creating one on the OAE, extremely useful, because we could all be working on it at the same time, and especially when it came to presenting at Fashion Week this past February, and the Celebrating Fashion Show that we hold at our school every spring. We found it really helpful to have those different aspects to collaborate, even if we didn't have time in class.
we're just going to go back to the map.
So yeah, as I mentioned, we try to incorporate this on every aspect of working at OAE and the MOOCs.
And we've also been doing some trend spotting here in Miami, so we wanted to share that with you. So last night we were at Lake in the Road, and we did some trend spotting, and we found this Argentinian woman with really cool shoes. So it's great because it's a really easy tool to use. So you can take the pictures, we post them onto the OAE first, gather all the information with our details, where we took it, and then you can put it directly onto the map. These were people shopping in Urban Outfitters, and this is where we noticed that there was a big gold trend going on right now.
Sweet men and women.
And then this is where we saw the gold trend as well.
And not only did we find trends on the streets of Miami, but we found them here at the conference. You're actually in one of them.
So throughout this week, our goal was to see how people differentiated themselves at a conference, because obviously we don't have any experiences with conferences, so we came and we saw what you would expect, button down, some suits, but we wanted to see in a setting like this what would stand out, because when you're on the street you can see what stands out from other people, but it's interesting to look at it in different kind of settings like this. So here, we noticed a lot of color yesterday. So the yellow pants really stood out to us amidst a lot of the blacks and the grays and the more enigmatic colors. And here the color continued. With the colorful leggings. Once again, more colors. So basically the whole point of this is to show that anywhere that you are, you can find trends, you can find something that stands out from the crowd, and it's not just for fashion people. Anyone, anywhere in the world can use it, and it's just so interesting to see what's going on in each country, in each city, in each area of the city. So that's what we wanted to show with the conference.
And by doing that, we were able to see how everybody's coming from different places and how each group dressed similarly, whether it was through color, different patterns, and we wanted to document that and then share that on the OAE and see how everybody would react to that and then start the conversation that way.
You all set?
Yeah.
Great. So before I conclude, I want to let everybody else know how you can collaborate here in the field. So I do want to have the students stand up here for a second and get recognized, because everybody here because they did a great job with this entire project. What you've seen here is only one small part of what we worked on the entire academic year. And so really it's just a small fraction of what they accomplished. So we are going to be continuing this project moving forward. And so we're going to be working over the summer, myself, Professor Halverson, and Bradley Creamer, who's the director of the program, and others to debrief, take lessons learned from this year, apply it next year. I think we're going to even go further in terms of what we've been able to accomplish. If you're interested and we're trying to promote this as much as possible, here's how you can go about adding your observations and street trends to OAE, and you can collaborate as well. And I realize that may not be something you're going to do yourself here, but I wanted to mention this because it would be great to find some other institutions that have fashion programs that would like to participate with Marist and maybe even partner more closely with us. So if your institution has fashion or just general design programs, it would be great to connect up with me and I can get you in touch with folks in collaboration. So with that, we wanted to make sure we had time for questions and discussions. So I'll open it up here for questions.
Do you have any kind of analytics on site to see how many people are going through, where they're from, and that kind of thing?
We actually did through Lesson Builder, which is what we high. We were able to monitor how many people signed up for our who and just start there.
So we had 565 people registered for the meeting, and this is the future of fashion week. There was others, but this is peer-to-peer group. It's actually about OAE. It's a good question. I don't know that we've done much stats with OAE. I'm sure we could for those happen.
So the idea, actually, I'm not sure if it's still up there. One of the things that we did, so basically as, correct me if I'm wrong, but as the group was ending, one of the last things that happened was to invite the participants who were learning how to do trend analysis like this, just go into OAE and continue collaborating. In fact, one of my interests was to see if we could have collaboration survive the end of a move. So usually add some collaboration during the move, but can it keep going after? Usually the move to almost see the beginnings of an academic scholarly community around fashion, and then just have that continue. I think we still have work to do there for sure, but that was the idea. I think at one point we thought, we did load testing to make sure we can handle 10,000 people on this move, but 565 is great to see that. Yeah.
So it looks like this is first February 7th. So an average session duration of about 5 hours.
So more than that. So it's additional.
So I'm just really interested about how you integrate time and OAE together and how easy it is to move between it. I mean, the participants move between it, or is the participants like only on OAE? And then you guys are working with the kind for your group part, and then OAE for the public part. So I'm confused as to how they...
You guys want to talk about CAS authentication and the single sign-on functions?
So it's seamless.
Yeah, so at the technical level, you can see right here, there's a link into the OAE environment, and I can pull that up, and we had single sign-on, so that if you have an account that brought you into the move, that account worked in the OAE environment. So you can move kind of seamlessly back and forth.
And we got an email even today that someone from the move had joined the OAE. So, and it gives them an app. It was an app move.parents.edu account. So we could see that person was moved. But we also put together a little thing called how to join the OAE. So, for example, our final project for the move was posted onto the OAE, so we gave them instructions for how to sign up for it. But it all seems to work together.
One of your questions, though, was like content, for example.
Yeah.
That's an area that I think, we've talked in the project in terms of the academic community cloud model. If that is successful, as it seems to be, there's a number of things that I think we'll need to do to really, move this into large scale production. And one of those is a little bit tighter connections between content between OAE and SCOG. So it's out there for sure. The fact that everything in OAE is content really makes it much easier just right now to be able to link into content that's in OAE. So you can go back here to the oops. So when we created students created the landing page here, these are just links right into OAE, but these were public groups within OAE. So it made it very easy for us to create a link to go to people right into the group. And I think I'm signed in right now. Sign out. Oh, this is a public group. We can create joinable groups so that we'll have a little join icon and someone join this group, so it won't work. But so join groups are joining us, so we made it easy for people who wanted to start with us to join the group. So, yeah. Questions?
So we have a lot of content on our pages, and there's a street trip lab that we use for research and to collect photos. We're from different semesters this year, so we were doing where folders separate, one of the trends we're having is they change all the are having that like folders.
If we didn't want everything in Paris groups just to stay there, we wanted to have like, a certain date of Paris groups all go into one folder, or say you wanted to do the best of Paris, all go into one.
Which happens to be in our program. Any other questions? All right, well, I appreciate you coming out, and we'll be around if you want to talk.
You're a star. I'm guessing. Do you guys want to, we'll take a breather and be back to work and we'll be ready for us now.